Welcome to the Food Bloggers Table. Pull up a chair for authentic conversations and actionable advice from fellow food bloggers and industry experts. I'm your host, Jen, and I create custom food blogs designed to earn top-tier ad income. Join us now at the table as we break bread and build brands. Can colors ruin your blog? Are there certain colors a person should avoid? Can you weigh in on that?
So for me, color is so important. Like color psychology is one of my favorite topics. And it's something that I love to delve into my clients with and show them what certain colors evoke certain feelings. So for example, yellow is one of the happiest colors in the world. It's very creative. And then you have blue. Now, if you go really quite deep with the blue tones, it can become very corporate, but also it's a very trusting color and it's very credible. So for me, when it comes to blog, especially if you've got ads and especially if you've got a lot going on the page, I would always say keep your background white, but let's bring in your brand colors among the main copy of like your blog and your images and stuff like that. Because if you've got a different background color and then you try and lay your other colors on top, sometimes the contrast doesn't work. Now, contrast is like light pink with white text. It's going to be difficult to read, but light pink with black text will be really easy to read. So that's what contrast means. And if you don't know about that and you're putting together your blog, it could be that the contrast is actually making it harder for people to read, which means they're not going to stay on your site for long. They're going to go elsewhere. And before you know it, what you've put together hasn't actually impacted your income or comments or the view numbers. So for me, color's definitely really important, especially online. There's a couple of things you can do. So if you are like DIYing your own colors, you can go on Google and just search for color contrast checker, and you'll be able to take what's called a hex code. So if you're in Canva, for example, you'll see it's like a number with a little hash at the front of it. That's your hex code, and you can take that number and put it into the contrast checker and it will give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If it's a thumbs down, you need to revisit your colors. So that's one of the biggest things I think is accessibility and making sure that it's not difficult for people to read or stay on your page, especially if you've got a lot of ads going on in there. You might have pop-ups and things like that. You still want your key message to be about your blog. So yeah, I think it's really important. And it could be something as simple as making your titles one of your main brand colors. So when I am putting a color palette together, I tend to stick to one or two main colors and then having a couple of contrasting colors and then an accent. And the accent color could be, say you have navy with orange, you might also then have a yellow. But the yellow would be like your buttons on your website. View more here, read the next blog here. But your title might actually be in the navy color or the blue color because that's the one that's most prominent in your branding. But it just makes your blog a lot easier to read, especially when less is more, when you're wanting people to stay on that particular page. You want to make it as easy as possible color wise.
I agree with that entirely. And one thing that I've seen, and I've talked to clients of mine when we've done website redesigns and we're talking about color choice, sometimes there's a major disconnect between the colors that they really like. Maybe they're really into pastel colors. They love pastel colors. That's their favorite color palette. And yet, interestingly, their images might be dark and moody. And those two things feel super disconnected.
Yeah.
What would a person do to make that work?
So I think for me, you would have to marry up those pastel colors with darker tones in order to make them work. One, that's going to give you the contrast, but what that's then also going to do is marry up what you've got your brand photography alongside your own brand colors. Now, if you've got something that's very light and airy in your branding, you probably want your photography to be quite bright and quite white and quite neutral. But equally, if you've got a pastel, very light, airy branding and you're going, like you say, for the moody colors, you're going to have a disconnect. So photography is really key to make sure that it's in line. So again, it goes back to your values and who your ideal audience is. If your ideal audience loves this dark, moody tone, then you could then go, actually, does my branding say that? Is the design, is the colours right? And it could be a mix of both, or it could just be that your colours, you're picking them because you like them and not necessarily what suits the business best. Yes, of course, you have to like your own brand colours, but sometimes it's not just about you as the business owner, but it's about the bigger picture remember who you're trying to connect with, who are you trying to get on your page. And if it's a bit of a mismatch, again, they're going to be like, this doesn't seem like it's well put together. And it might make them think that it's maybe not credible, it's maybe not as professional. Whereas if you can get these things to marry up, and that's where your creative direction comes in, because if you've got some pastels with some more saturated or even a muted colour, it doesn't have to be bright, but it can be something that's maybe, say we take lilac and we marry that up with a really muted purple. The contrast, one, will start straight away, but equally, if your photography is a bit moody and has those darker tones, you can then see how everything fits together. And it could be that pastel colour is maybe a couple of illustration bits that are dotted throughout. You might have a creative title that's got a description. But again, yeah, it's all down to your colour contrast and making sure that the visuals you use in your business also match with your branding. And if there is a disconnect, people are going to see that. And then that's going to impact what they think. It's going to make them doubt. It's going to make them go, there's something not right here. And they might read the blog, but they might not remember your branding. So then they'll be like, oh, I read this blog and I can't remember who it was or what their logo was like or anything like that. But if everything was spot on, they'll go, oh, I know who it was. I might not be able to remember their name, but they had this particular logo, and then they'll know it when they see it, and then they'll start remembering who you are, or vice versa. So it has a bigger impact than I think a lot of people realize.
I think it goes back to consistency. Like you
Yeah.
were saying, it's all about consistency. It doesn't mean that everything's the exact same shade of green or that everything's the exact same shade of blue and
Yeah.
that every food blogger on the planet should have blue and pink or orange and yellow or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not what it's about.
No.
I love how the consistency starts in understanding your ideal customer, your messaging, your values. All of
Yeah.
these things are tied in. And that's so interesting to me because there's such a deep psychological side of it and how that plays into the bigger picture of what the brand represents and how those colors are then more or less the forward facing message of the brand. And that's what your clients are seeing. This branding, this color palette that they're seeing is now connecting the imagery, which then connects that psychological component. And so the colors are really the central element that connects all the elements of the entire brand at
Yeah.
large.
And I think, well, if we take one of the biggest companies around the world, Coca-Cola, let's use them as an example. They are synonymous with red. Now, if you landed on their website and they had red with some green thrown in, and then they were using Christmas images, and you know what their Christmas is, it's quite big. But if you were then to go on and see that they'd used, a stock image, you would see straight away that it's a stock image and it's not really got that same feeling, that the magic of Christmas isn't in that image anymore. And there's this weird colour on their website. You would then be like, is this the right website? And then you would go off the website because you would think something's not right. But that is the impact when people really start to get to know a company and what they're putting out there. They expect a certain level of that. And brand recognition is so important, because when you've got the brand recognition, you've kind of hit the golden spot, because then people can just go red. They might just see that image of Santa that they use and the type of photography, or they might just see a red truck with lights round about it, and they might just, and before they can even see what brand it is, they'll go, I think I know who that is. And that is, it's the ultimate goal. And I know we all don't have the budgets like Coca-Cola have, but that's an example of brand recognition, brand consistency. There's actually a company in Glasgow, in Scotland, who have done so much homework on their ideal client that any decision they make on their business, they go to this book and go, what would that person want? Because they've done such a massive deep dive. Now, some of us don't have to do that because we're smaller businesses, but that deep dive really makes you go, where do they hang about? What are their hobbies? What are their interests? And if you find that some of them are into particular hobbies and interests, and you know there's a huge percentage of that audience hanging about in a particular area, but your branding is the complete opposite, they're not going to connect very well. And that also, like I say, it just comes down to recognition of colour. If this group particularly like black, I'm not suggesting everyone uses that colour, but do you want to then make your branding and what they see on their website tick the boxes for these people? And colour really can have an impact. And like that, Coca-Cola don't have a massive colour palette. You don't have to have 5 and 6 colours, because then that can get a bit chaotic. But to make it really simple, have one main colour, have 2 accent colours that work very well and contrast very well. And then you think about your photography, you think about your ideal customer, And yeah, like the deep dive into brand foundations is pretty awesome. And especially when you then show a color palette to a client and you explain the values that those colors bring, and then they can see it connecting to the business. They can then see what the ideal customer likes, and then it just starts to pull it together. And usually I've got the colors approved before I even get to the design stage. So we're setting that tone straight away. And yeah, there might be a couple of little tweaks as we go, but main foundations have been ticked. We're doing everything that the customer wants because color just evokes so much emotion. And just like that, have a think about some of the brands that you buy from every day, you interact with, you're a loyal customer of, and have a think about what are they doing. And they've likely got their values and their mission statement on their website. Go and check all that out. And then consider what colors are they using? Because that won't just be random. There'll be actual reasons to why they've chosen those particular colors. Love color.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Food Bloggers Table. I'm your host, Jennifer Holt, and I look forward to serving you in the next episode.